So imagine an empty box. Just picture it in your head. Now mentally reach in and remove all the air.
Good.
Then remove the particles of dust. Remove the darkness. Now take it a step further and remove the actual physical space inside the
Right,
box.
which is already getting difficult.
Exactly. And finally, remove the time it takes for you to even look at the box. What is left?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, nothing. And today, we are exploring a paradox that completely breaks the human brain. The question of, well, why is there something instead of nothing?
Yeah, it really is probably the single most impenetrable wall in human thought.
Yeah.
We're looking at a topic today that doesn't just, resist an easy answer. It actively fights back against the way our biological hardware and our logic are fundamentally structured.
And that is exactly the journey we're taking with today's deep dive. We're exploring the incredibly profound concepts brought up in the source material, specifically looking at the ideas discussed in episode 30 of the Time Traveler's Paradox. It's all about tackling this ultimate mystery. So, okay, let's unpack this, because to do it right, I need to ask you, the listener, a massive favor.
A mental reset, basically.
Yeah, exactly. For the next few minutes, I want you to just put aside your daily worries. Forget your inbox, forget like the errands you have to run later, forget whatever is stressing you out today. Join us in stepping back to explore a mystery that has quite literally haunted humans since the very first time someone stood in the dirt, looked up at a canopy of stars and thought, why is any of this here?
It's a profound shift in perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
But before we can even attempt to look for an answer, or, if there even is one, we actually have to take a hard look at the structural integrity of the question itself. Because the very act of asking, why does the universe exist, totally violates the normal rules of cause and effect that govern absolutely everything else in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I get that we are completely hardwired for cause and effect. It's just how we navigate reality. Like, if you're walking through a forest and you look at a massive oak tree and you ask why that tree exists, you intuitively look for a cause.
Right, there was an acorn.
Exactly. There was a seed, some soil, water. If you walk into a city and see a skyscraper, you don't think it just magically appeared out of nowhere. You look for a builder. You ask why a book exists. You look for an author. Everything inside our reality is basically a giant chain of dominoes. One thing knocks into the next, which knocks into the next.
And that domino effect works flawlessly, but,
Yeah.
and this is the key, only when we're dealing with things inside the universe.
Inside, right.
Yeah, causality is a property of the universe, just like gravity or thermodynamics.
Mm.
But here's the fatal flaw in applying that everyday localized logic to the ultimate question. There is absolutely nothing outside the universe to point toward as a cause.
Because it's everything.
By definition, yeah, the universe contains everything, is all the dominoes, it's the table they're set up on, and it's the room the table is in. You can't point to an external builder or an external seed because there is literally no such thing as external. It's like, well, you're basically trying to apply the rules of chess to a football game.
I understand the domino effect logically, but I gotta admit, my brain still wants to cheat here. Like, I keep picturing the Big Bang happening in this giant, empty black room. Can't we just picture empty space?
Ah, yeah, that
Like, before the universe, maybe there was just a vast, dark, silent void, and then stuff eventually appeared in it.
So that is the most common default setting for the human imagination, and it is entirely incorrect in this context.
Really?
Yeah, we have to violently differentiate between a vacuum and true nothing. When you picture an empty black room, you are still picturing something. Space has dimensions, right? It has geometry. Darkness is simply the absence of visible light, but it still exists within a spatial framework.
Okay, so it's still a stage. I'm basically just picturing a stage with the curtains drawn and the lights turned off.
Precisely. You're keeping the theater, you just remove the actors. To understand the baseline of this mystery, we really have to begin with true, absolute nothingness.
Which means?
Which means no matter, no energy, no time for things to happen in, no space for things to occupy, no laws of physics to dictate how things behave, no subatomic particles popping in and out, no observers, no potential, and no possibility whatsoever.
Oh, wow. Even trying to hold that concept in my head feels physically uncomfortable. It just like slips away. I can't visualize a lack of geometry.
And you never will be able to, because it's neurologically unimaginable. Since true nothing is a complete void of existence, we actually have to look at the mechanics of why our brains completely failed to process it. It's a literal hardware issue.
Right, and this is where the evolutionary context from our source material gets so fascinating. It points out that our brains aren't these perfectly tuned, objective, cosmic truth detectors.
It's not at all.
They're survival tools. They evolved over millions of years to do very specific things, like find calories, avoid predators, navigate social hierarchies, and recognize physical patterns.
Exactly. I mean, let's look at the actual neuroscience of spatial mapping. Our brains evolved to measure distances between, say, the tiger and the tree. We have specific neural pathways, grid cells, and place cells that require geometry to function.
Right.
So when you remove the tiger, remove the tree, and then remove the actual distance itself, our spatial processing center literally has no geometric input to render. It's not that we're just bad at imagining true nothingness. It's biologically incompatible with how human neurons fire.
Because the brain evolved entirely inside existence.
Right. Every single input it has ever received happened within a reality where things exist.
Man, here's where it gets really interesting. Grasping nothingness is neurologically impossible for us. It's kind of like asking a standard calculator to process a complex emotional feeling. The hardware simply doesn't have the architecture for the prompt.
It really doesn't. And this raises an important question. If our brains cannot physically comprehend nothingness, how do we evaluate its probability? It creates this massive philosophical paradox.
How so?
Well, think about the energy cost of the universe. If absolute nothingness is possible, why doesn't it exist? It seems like it would be the ultimate path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
No energy required, no complexity, no physical laws to
It's a
maintain.
zero effort.
Exactly. But if nothingness is the natural default state of reality, then why is there a spectacularly complex universe instead?
Wait, my brain is already trying to fix this. If true nothingness is impossible for us to picture, isn't it just easier to assume a creator? Or that the universe has just, always been here? Doesn't that solve the headache and let us bypass the whole nothingness problem entirely?
It definitely attempts to,
Yeah.
but it immediately falls victim to what philosophers call an infinite regress. Let's kind of deconstruct the mechanics of those classic answers using the logic from the source material.
Okay, let's do it.
So suppose someone argues that the universe was created by a higher power or some conscious force to solve the mystery of existence. The immediate, totally unavoidable logical next step is
What created the creator?
exactly what created the creator.
Right. I mean, saying a creator made the universe to solve the mystery of why there is something instead of nothing is like plugging a power strip into itself to get free electricity.
That's a great analogy.
The current has to originate somewhere. You haven't actually answered the question of existence. You've just moved the origin point.
Exactly. You've just transferred the burden of explanation onto a completely different entity. Now, suppose someone takes the other route and says, well, the universe itself has simply always existed. It's eternal.
Right. No beginning.
Yeah, but then the question immediately morphs. You no longer ask when did it start, but rather why does an eternal universe exist rather than an eternal nothingness? Why is there an always existing reality at all?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then you have the argument that reality somehow created itself. But logically, how can something create itself before it even exists to do the creating? You need the tool to build the tool.
Right, it's an endless loop that we are culturally conditioned to try and close. The source text brings up this really profound concept of the blank slate theory.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah, no child is born inherently knowing the answer to this question.
Yeah.
A baby doesn't emerge into the world stressing about the origins of the cosmos. It's a blank slate. We learn this question as we gain awareness. We learn to ponder it, and very often, because we absolutely abhor a vacuum of information, we learn to fear it.
And because of that fear and that intense psychological need for an answer, belief systems and religions have historically stepped in to supply the narratives. Stories like, a divine being spoke reality into existence, or the universe emanated from a cosmic egg. These narratives provide comfort and structure, but the text points out they differ wildly from culture to culture. They're essentially products of their specific geographic and historical environments, acting as a kind of psychological patch for that gap in our cognitive hardware.
Yeah, they're narrative frameworks meant to satisfy the human need for causality. But let's look at the other side of the spectrum. What about the empirical framework?
Yeah, what about science? I mean, we've cracked the atom, we've mapped the human genome, we've built telescopes that can literally look backward in time to the afterglow of the Big Bang. Surely astrophysics or quantum mechanics has something definitive to say about why there is something rather than nothing.
Well, science is undeniably brilliant, but it operates within incredibly strict boundaries. Science has revealed staggering truths, like the exact age of the observable universe, the life cycle and evolution of stars, how gravity sculpts galaxies, the behavior of subatomic matter, the chemical emergence of life.
Right, it's a long list of achievements.
It is. But if you look closely at that list, science is exclusively answering the how.
It gives us the mechanics, but not the necessity of those mechanics.
Precisely. Let's look at the physics boundary of the Big Bang itself. We often ask, what caused the Big Bang, or what happened before it? But modern physics, stemming from Einstein's relativity, shows that space and time are deeply woven together into a single fabric space-time. Time itself was created in the expansion of the universe.
So asking what happened before the universe is fundamentally flawed.
It is both grammatically and physically meaningless. If time didn't exist until the universe existed, there is no such thing as before. You cannot have a cause without time, because a cause strictly implies a sequence of events. First the cause, then the effect.
Right.
Science can trace the dominoes all the way back to the very first fraction of a second of the Big Bang, but it completely fails to explain the ultimate why. Why is there a system of space-time to begin with? Science basically assumes existence in order to study it, but it cannot explain the necessity of existence itself.
Okay, so if neither cultural religious narratives nor the hard mathematical data of science offers a definitive, universally provable why, what are we actually left with? Like, what philosophical models survive this kind of scrutiny?
Well, the source material outlines three distinct philosophical possibilities, though I should warn you, none of them neatly resolve the tension. The first possibility is that existence requires no explanation. It's what philosophers call a brute fact.
A brute fact.
Yeah, it just is. It has no deeper reason, and looking for a foundational cause is simply a human mistake.
See, I have a really hard time accepting that. That is deeply unsatisfying to me. To me, that's like waking up, walking into your living room, and finding a giant, humming, incredibly complex machine taking up the entire room.
Right.
You wouldn't just sit on the couch, drink your coffee, and say, well, I guess it doesn't need an explanation. You would poke it. You would look for a power cord. You'd trace the wiring. You'd want to know where it came from and what it's doing.
It violently contradicts our instinct to find patterns, yes. The second possibility is what we touched on earlier, that existence is eternal. It never began, it will never end. It simply is an infinite continuum. But as we discussed, an eternal state still demands an explanation for its own presence.
Right. It just changes the shape of the puzzle. What about the third option? Because I know the multiverse is getting a ton of attention right now.
The third possibility is indeed the multiverse theory. It's this mathematical idea that our universe is just one of countless, perhaps infinite possibilities bubbling up in a broader landscape of reality. Different physical laws, different constants, just endless variations of existence.
The multiverse sounds expansive and, scientifically cutting edge, but when you really drill down into the logic, it doesn't solve the core mystery at all. It's just a bigger box.
Exactly.
Like, okay, great, there are infinite universes bubbling up in a cosmic landscape. Now I'm just going to ask, why does the landscape exist? Why is there an infinite bubble bath of universes instead of no bubble bath at all? You're still stuck with the exact same fundamental question.
You are. And that frustration, that feeling of hitting a conceptual brick wall, is entirely valid. But I must remind you of a very cold, hard truth. Reality is under absolutely no obligation to satisfy human preferences.
Ouch.
Right. We want a neat, tidy answer with a bow on top. We want the final page of the mystery novel to reveal the culprit. The universe does not owe us an ending. Every single road of inquiry, whether it's theology, quantum mechanics, or philosophy, eventually circles right back to the original staggering mystery.
But if all roads circle back, maybe the problem isn't the mystery itself. Maybe the problem is how we, as a species, are viewing the concept of mystery in the first place.
What's fascinating here is how culturally conditioned we are to view unsolved mysteries as a negative thing. Because humans are so accustomed to solving problems like building bridges, curing diseases, engineering software, we assume an unresolved question is a failure.
Like an error in the system that needs to be fixed.
Exactly. But what if a mystery of this magnitude is actually an invitation? An invitation to curiosity, to exploration, and perhaps most importantly, to a deep, profound humility.
Yes, I am completely on board with this reframing. There's this profound idea in the text we reviewed. Imagine a universe where every single question already had an obvious, easily accessible answer printed on it. Sure, it sounds incredibly efficient, but it also sounds horribly static. It sounds boring.
It would be a reality entirely devoid of discovery.
Yeah. Uncertainty is the engine that drives consciousness forward. Every major leap in human history, our greatest art, our deepest scientific inquiries, our most radical inventions, they didn't start with someone sitting in a room being perfectly certain about how the world worked. They started with someone looking out at the vast unknown and simply saying, I wonder. The mystery isn't a bug in the system, it's the fuel.
And that reframing leads to what the source material presents as the ultimate realization in this exploration. We have spent all this time agonizing over why there is something instead of nothing. But if we shift our perspective, we realize that the mere fact of existence itself is the greatest, most statistically improbable miracle imaginable.
When you really map out the timeline of what it took for us to be having this conversation, the sheer scale of it is humbling. Just consider the mechanics of the alternatives. You have 14 billion years of cosmic history, unimaginably vast clouds of hydrogen gas slowly igniting under their own gravity to form the first stars.
Right.
They're stars living for millions of years, dying and violently exploding in supernovas just to forge the heavier elements like the carbon, the iron, the oxygen. Galaxies slowly swirling into existence over eons. Planets coalescing from the chaotic debris of dead stars. The incredibly delicate, fragile balance of chemistry and temperature required for single-celled life to emerge in primordial oceans.
Billions upon billions of years of silent, mechanical evolution, a universe entirely devoid of witnesses. Just a vast, dark expanse of physics playing out with absolutely no one there to see it.
Until us. After 14 billion years of that silent machinery, the universe eventually contained creatures with a complex enough nervous system to look up at the night sky and ask why it exists. Think about the weight of that. The universe became aware enough to question itself. Through us. We are the universe, thinking about the universe.
It is a stunning, paradigm-shifting realization. We are not separate observers sitting in the audience looking at existence on a stage. We are existence waking up and looking at itself in a mirror. We are the cosmos made conscious.
Which brings up a really tough, practical reality check. If the fact that we exist is a literal, scientifically verifiable miracle of cosmic self-awareness, why isn't everyone constantly overwhelmed by it? Like, if you're driving to work right now, listener, look at your hands on the steering wheel. It took 14 billion years of cosmic violence just to forge the calcium in your knuckles. So why aren't we all just vibrating with the sheer awe of being alive every single second of the day?
Well, it's a strange, almost tragic paradox of being human. People forget this miracle because they are quite literally first to prioritize survival. We're consumed by the immediate crushing mechanics of our days. Working, worrying about inflation, competing for resources, paying rent, chasing money, arguing over trivialities.
Yeah, just getting through the week.
Our brains are forced to prioritize the mundane over the miraculous just to keep us fed and sheltered. In the intense process of maintaining our existence, we become completely numb to the staggering wonder of it.
We are made of stardust, but we still got to pay rent on Friday. There's a phrase from the text that perfectly captures this. Familiarity hides wonder. We get so used to the miracle of reality that it just becomes background noise. We completely overlook the absolute improbability of consciousness, the improbability of being able to feel love, of having deep friendships, of walking through a forest, of just standing outside and seeing the stars.
The human brain normalizes everything to conserve cognitive energy. It's an evolutionary feature, a survival mechanism that unfortunately robs us of our daily sense of awe. If you were constantly marveling at the existence of a tree, you might not notice the predator hiding behind it.
So it takes actual conscious effort to break that spell?
To pause just for a moment and let yourself be genuinely amazed that anything exists at all, to feel the immense weight of that miracle instead of just stressing about your commute.
It is a mental muscle that requires intentional flexing. And as we look forward, having explored the depths of why we're here, we really have to pivot our focus to the future. Because we are this conscious universe, the responsibility falls squarely on us to figure out what happens next. The question isn't just why we exist, but what we're going to do with that existence. What kind of future should humanity create?
Because the answer to that isn't pre-written in the stars. No, it is being built right now by us. The choices we make today, the way we value our own conscious existence and the existence of others, will determine our trajectory. It will determine whether human civilization becomes something truly extraordinary, like a conscious, thriving, long-term steward of the universe, or whether we simply extinguish ourselves, fading away like countless forgotten species before us, returning the universe to that silent, unobserved machinery.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive by trying to solve a puzzle. Why is there something instead of nothing? But I think the real takeaway here is that the answer to existence isn't a puzzle to be solved all. It's not a mathematical equation you balance or a mechanism you can take apart. It is a reality to be experienced.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the goal isn't to tie reality up in a neat little conceptual bow. The goal is to just sit with the mystery of existence, Don't try to defeat it with logic. Don't let your brain's hardware limitations frustrate you. Let the mystery wash over you. Let it inspire a deep sense of wonder. Let it remind you of how incredibly, astonishingly lucky you are to be part of the something instead of the nothing.
We are the universe experiencing itself. And that leaves us with one final lingering thought from the source material, a thought to carry with you long after you finish your commute or your day. If the universe became aware enough to question itself through us, well, what question should we ask next?